A stick shaker is one of aviation's most physical warnings. The airplane grabs the pilot's hand and says, "Do not keep pulling." This documentary is about why that warning exists, how it works, and why it still matters in modern cockpits. It is not a Boeing procedure lesson. It is not a checklist. It is a systems story about angle of attack, human attention, and a warning designed to be impossible to miss. Start with the basic problem. A wing does not stall because the airspeed indicator says a magic number. A wing stalls when the angle between the wing and the relative wind gets too large. That angle is called angle of attack. The FAA's Airplane Flying Handbook makes the point plainly. A stall is the result of exceeding critical angle of attack, and it can happen at any airspeed, any attitude, and any power setting. That idea is the heart of the stick shaker. The system is not asking, is the airplane slow in a simple way? It is asking, is the wing getting close to the angle where smooth airflow can no longer stay attached? When airflow separates, lift drops, drag rises, and the airplane may lose controllability. The shaker is meant to warn before that point, while the crew still has time to reduce angle of attack and recover the margin. In small airplanes, pilots often learn stall warning through a horn, a light buffet, mushy controls, or a change in sound. Some aircraft naturally shake as the disturbed airflow reaches the tail and control system. That natural buffet can be useful, but it is not universal. Large transport aircraft, powered controls, swept wings, rear engines, T-tails, and modern flight controls can all change what the pilot feels. A big aircraft can be close to the edge without giving the same natural yoke shake a small cable-controlled airplane might give. The early jet age made that problem more urgent. One of the key historical lessons came from deep stall. In a deep stall, especially on some T-tail aircraft, the wing can blanket the tail with disturbed airflow. The elevator may lose enough authority that normal nose-down recovery becomes ineffective. The 1963 BX 111 prototype crash during stall testing became part of aviation's painful education on this problem. The lesson was not just that pilots needed another light on the panel. The lesson was that some airplanes needed a forceful, unmistakable warning before the aircraft reached a region where recovery could become extremely difficult or impossible. That is where the stick shaker earned its place. It turns an aerodynamic warning into a tactile warning. Instead of asking the pilot to notice one more gauge, it vibrates the control column. In many aircraft, the device is essentially an electric motor with an intentionally unbalanced mass. When the motor spins, the imbalance shakes the yoke or control column rapidly. The result is loud, rough, and surprising on purpose. Think of it as an artificial version of natural buffet. The system is trying to create the feeling of an airplane that is telling on itself. The pilot may be busy. The pilot may be scanning radios, checklist items, weather, traffic, or automation modes. A light can be missed. A number can be misunderstood. But a control column shaking in the pilot's hands is hard to ignore. How does the airplane decide when to shake? The exact design depends on the aircraft, but the general logic is common. Angle of attack sensors, often small vanes outside the fuselage, measure the direction of the airflow relative to the airplane. Flight computers compare that information with aircraft configuration, flaps, slats, gear, Mach number, sometimes thrust, icing modes, and other factors. The warning threshold is scheduled so the shaker activates before the actual stall, not after it. That margin is not a casual design choice. Transport category certification rules require stall warning with enough margin to prevent inadvertent stalling, and the warning has to be clear and distinctive. The rule also says that a purely visual warning that requires the crew's attention inside the cockpit is not enough by itself. That is the philosophy behind tactile and oral warnings. The airplane must get through to the crew under real cockpit workload. In the cockpit, the sequence can be simple and dramatic. The aircraft approaches a high angle of attack. The computer sees the threshold. The stick shaker motor energizes. The column vibrates. An oral warning may sound. The autopilot may disconnect depending on the aircraft. The message is not subtle. Reduce angle of attack now. The most important phrase is reduce angle of attack. That usually means unloading the wing by reducing back pressure and lowering the nose enough to stop the stall warning and regain margin. Power matters too, especially for arresting descent and restoring energy. But power alone does not fix a stall if the wing remains at too high an angle of attack. A pilot can add thrust and still stay stalled if they keep pulling. That is why modern stall training talks so much about first principles. The FAA's stall and stick pusher training guidance emphasized that the primary means of approach to stall or stall recovery is reducing angle of attack at the first indication of a stall. It sounds simple in a calm classroom. In a real cockpit with automation, disconnecting, noise, vibration, weather, radio calls, and surprise, it must be trained until it is automatic. The stick shaker also teaches a human factors lesson. A warning is not the same as a recovery. A warning only creates an opportunity. The crew still has to recognize it, understand it, and respond correctly. That distinction shows up painfully in accident history. Colgan Air Flight 3407, a Bombardier Q400, crashed near Buffalo in 2009 after a loss of control on approach. The NTSB reported that the low-speed cue and stick shaker were intended to warn of an impending stall, and that they functioned as designed. The aircraft was not yet in an aerodynamic stall when the shaker activated, but the response was wrong. Aft control column inputs increased angle of attack, and the airplane stalled. The lesson is not that the shaker failed. The lesson is that a clear warning still depends on monitoring, training, and the right reflex. There is another system sometimes discussed with the shaker, the stick pusher. They are related, but not the same. A stick shaker warns, a stick pusher acts. On some aircraft, especially designs with deep stall risk, a pusher can command a nose-down input if the aircraft keeps approaching the stall after the shaker. Skybrary describes the pusher as associated with aircraft susceptible to deep stall, and notes that the shaker activates before the pusher. The pusher exists because some aircraft cannot safely rely on warning alone near the edge of the envelope. But even on aircraft with a pusher, the ideal response is earlier. The shaker is the invitation to solve the problem while the airplane is still giving the crew margin. Waiting for the pusher means the crew has already allowed the situation to become more serious. Icing adds another layer. Stall warning systems are usually calibrated to known aircraft configurations and clean aerodynamic assumptions. Ice can change the shape of the wing, disturb airflow, and reduce the angle of attack at which the wing stalls. Certification rules and aircraft systems account for icing in specific ways, but the practical lesson is conservative. Contamination can reduce margins. The safest story is still to respect the first warning and avoid getting near the edge. Now look at the hardware as a pilot might see it. In a Boeing-style cockpit, the yokes sit in front of the captain and first officer. Inside or near the control column, a shaker actuator can vibrate the column. The airplane may also show low-speed cues on the primary flight display. The shaker is not isolated from the rest of the cockpit picture. It fits into a larger set of cues: airspeed trend, pitch attitude, vertical speed, power setting, flap configuration, bank angle, and automation mode. That larger picture matters because stalls are not always a slow, wings-level training maneuver. Load factor changes stall speed. A steep turn, abrupt pull, wind shear recovery, go-around, icing encounter, or automation surprise can bring the airplane closer to critical angle of attack. The shaker gives a final physical cue, but the better crew is already seeing the energy trend before the shaker starts. There is also a design philosophy here. Aviation warnings compete for attention. Too soft and they disappear into workload. Too vague and pilots waste time interpreting them. Too frequent or nuisance-prone, and people begin to distrust them. The stick shaker solves one part of that problem by being highly distinctive. You do not confuse it with a normal chime. You feel it through the controls. It is not elegant. It is urgent. The best mental model is this. The stick shaker is not saying the airplane has already fallen out of the sky. It is saying the wing is close enough to the critical angle that the crew must stop the trend now. It is a boundary marker, placed before the cliff. For maintenance and flight crews, pre-flight or before takeoff tests may confirm that warning systems are armed or functional, depending on aircraft type and procedures. Those tests are aircraft-specific, so this documentary will not describe switchology. The general point is that a warning system is only useful if it is available, trusted, and understood. For passengers, the sound of a stick shaker on accident recordings can be unsettling because it is loud and mechanical. That is deliberate. It is not designed to be pleasant. It is designed to cut through distraction, stress, and ambiguity. For pilots, the takeaway is more disciplined. A shaker is not an invitation to analyze for 10 seconds. It is a call to reduce angle of attack, manage energy, follow the approved recovery procedure, and communicate. The exact pitch, power, and configuration actions depend on the aircraft and operator procedures. The first principle does not change: unload the wing. So the history of the stick shaker is really a history of aviation, learning to respect the edge of the envelope. Natural buffet was not always enough. Lights were not enough. Human attention was not enough. Some aircraft needed a warning that could reach through the pilot's hands. And the engineering is beautifully direct. Sense the wing's approach to critical angle of attack. Compare it to a schedule that accounts for configuration. Activate a motor that shakes the control column before the stall. Give the crew a margin. Make the warning unmistakable. The final lesson is humbling. The stick shaker is one of the clearest warnings in aviation, but it is still only a warning. Safety comes from the full chain: aerodynamics, sensors, certification, maintenance, training, monitoring, crew coordination, and the immediate decision to reduce angle of attack. When the controls start shaking, the airplane is speaking in the strongest language it has.